wabarakatuh. I am Vanessa Emangulamas, a B.Ed student. So, in this video, I am going to discuss the principles of teaching and learning a language. So, I am hoping that after the discussion, we are able to understand the principles of teaching and learning in the choice of activities for learning. When we say principle, it is a kind of rule, belief, or an idea that guides us. So, as an inspiring teacher, we should be guided by a principle. That means our teaching should be guided by a set of principles. It is because that principles explains educational processes. Educational processes pertains to the steps that a teacher should follow in order to provide a good quality of education to the students. So from planning, implementation, evaluation, and revision if needed. On the part of a teacher, principles is very important because it guides his or her reflective thinking and his or her choice of activities and actions to achieve best results. Principles had been defined by various authors and platforms. So, according to the Webster, principle is a comprehensive law or doctrine from which others are arrived or which others are founded. While in the language of Hopkins, a principle is a rule for guiding the ship of education so that it will reach the port of education designated by the philosophy of education. So, it is a compass by which the part of education is directed. That means, as an aspiring teacher, having principle is very much important because it serves as a guide to achieve our goal, which is to become a teacher. While in educational practice, the term principle is not thought of as a rule, but rather as a fundamental truth regarding relationship of factors with the teacher and the pupil deal. Now that we already know what principle is, so let's proceed to the principles that makes a teaching and a learning intelligent and productive. So, Corpus B and G Salandanan mention 12 principles that guide us to make teaching and learning intelligent and productive. The first principle is begin with end in mind. So, with a specific objectives in mind, our lesson becomes more focused, and with a clear focus, no amount of far-fetched questions or comments from our students, and also no amount of unnecessary interruptions or disruptions can cause to run off our intended lesson for the day. So, always remember to clarify what you want your students to achieve at the end of the lesson. And for me, as a teacher, it is very important that before the discussion starts, we should articulate the knowledge and the skills that we want our students to achieve at the end of the discussion. So, through this, students can direct their learning efforts appropriately and monitor their own progress. The second principle is to encourage our students to personalize the learning goals identified for them. So, our students must own the lesson objectives because when they make the lesson objectives their own, they take care of their learning. So, when students set their own personal targets, they will become more self-motivated. Once a student is self-motivated, learning for them will become easier. And other than that, the students who are more motivated to learn produce higher quality effort, learn more deeply, and perform better in class and in any standardized test. The third principle is motivation is essential in learning. So, learning is an experience which occurs inside the learner and is activated by the learner. So, it is necessary that our students get self-motivated to learn English or Filipino. So, it is motivation that makes students explore, choose, remain interested, participate actively, and build self-confidence. But the question is, how can we motivate our students? Students get motivated to learn more when they receive praises or any positive reaction from the teacher. So, using positive reinforcement builds the confidence required in students to study more. And aside from that, motivating students can help them to overcome performance anxiety inside the classroom. The fourth principle is learning is a social activity. Pine and Hort mentioned that learning is a cooperative and collaborative process. So, people enjoy functioning independently, but they also enjoy functioning interdependently. As we observe, when we interact with others, we learn from them. In the same way, they also learn from us. While in the context of language learning, language is learned through socialization and interactive activities. The fifth principle is teaching and learning language is more meaningful and more effective when it is integrated. Integrative learning builds the ability to make connection among ideas and experiences across the curriculum and co-curriculum. So, an example of this integrative learning is involving students into a non-profit organization. So, through this, they're given an opportunity to experience such things that will develop their skills in communication. Integrative learning and teaching is very much important because if it is done, the following will be achieved. First is incorporate before language arts, which is the listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Next is consider varied strategies for all multiple intelligence and learning styles. For me, it is essential to consider the learning styles of the students for them to learn efficiently and effectively. So there are students that are strong visual learners and always learn best from graph, illustration, and graphic organizer. And there are also students who only take in information if they can talk it out themselves. And there are also students that are very tactile and need to manipulate objects in order to solidify concepts in their mind. Next is to apply interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary teaching. So, interdisciplinary means integrating knowledge and methods from the different disciplines using a real synthesis of approaches. So, travels, field trips can serve as a theme for cross-curricular interdisciplinary instruction. While the multidisciplinary is something that combines several fields of study or academic interest. An example of multidisciplinary teaching is when we teach math, science, English, and other subjects. Next is to teach a language structure and form in an authentic context rather than through contrived drills in language workbooks. Next is to connect the lesson to the life experiences of the student. So it is true that we cannot separate our learnings from our lives. So what students learn become more meaningful. And aside from that, the learnings will longer retain when they connected to their real life. Next is to incorporate a research-based instructional strategies for teaching. So this strategy had been proven to have the greatest likelihood of affecting students' learning. And it can also be used by any teacher in any grade level with any subject, content, and topic. Next is to integrate values in our lesson. So, integration of values with teaching aims to develop positive environment so that the students are able to internalize and activate the three domains of learning, which is the cognitive, psychomotor, and affective. The sixth principle is conducive classroom is a sine qua non of the teaching and learning process. So sine qua non means something that is essential. Indeed, that conducive classroom is essential in teaching and learning process. Students who study in a conducive learning environment had been shown to be more motivated, engage, and have a higher overall learning ability. So always remember to build comfort into learning. Conducive learning environment describes as encourages people to be active, emphasizes the uniquely personal and subjective nature of learning, promotes and facilitates the individual's discovery of the personal meaning and ideas, sees differences as good and desirable, tolerates ambiguity, looks at evaluation as a cooperative process, and emphasizes on self-evaluation. Next, encourages openness of self rather than concealment of self. Next, give respect to people. Next is accept people who they are. And last, it permits confrontation with self and ideas. The seventh principle is learning is an active process in which the learner uses sensory input and constructs meaning out of it. So, active learning is an approach to instruction that involves actively engaging students with the course material through discussion, problem solving, case studies, role plays, and other methods. This process encourages children to learn through trial and error, discovery, and social interaction. The eighth principle is learning is reflective. So the crucial action of constructive meaning is mental. So it happens in the mind. Physical activities or action and hands-on experiences may be necessary for learning, but it is not sufficient or enough. So as a teacher, we need to provide an activities which engages the mind as well as the hands. It is very important to combine hands-on as well as the minds-on. As what Dr. Herb Through stated, tell me and I'll forget, show me and I may remember, but involve me and I'll understand. So this quote reminds us teachers about using hands-on and project-based learning activities whenever possible. The ninth principle is an approach that allows for more time, more depth with fewer, more complex topics is more desirable. So in the desire of the teacher to cover syllabus content for the whole year, we observe and read of a mile-wide and inch-depth teaching. So what does it mean? The mile-wide wide refers to the range of activities that are presented through teaching, while the inch depth is the depth, or perhaps more appropriately the shallowness, that concern with the learning and the educational outcome. The 10th principle is emphasized on self-evaluation. Feedback should be criterion or reference and practiced using rubrics. Self-evaluation is essential to assess our skills, talents, and success. So, it will also help us to identify the areas we need to improve from a more practical and helpful perspectives. It is stated that feedback should be criterion reference. In a criterion reference, the student's score is not affected by the performance of others. It means the teacher evaluates his or her students based on the given criteria or standards. The 11th principle is make use of an integrated performance assessment that makes the connection between learning styles, intelligence, and the real world explicit in a way that is useful to both students and the teachers. Integrated performance assessment provides an opportunities for students to demonstrate how they use their language skills given in a real-life task. The last principle is emphasized on real-world application that favors realistic performances over out of context drills items. Gardner argued for assessment practices that look directly at the performances that we value, whether it is linguistic, logical, aesthetic, or social performances. Such assignments require students to generate rather than to choose a response and to actively accomplish complex tasks while bringing to bear prior knowledge, new learning, and relevant skills. This principle emphasizes the importance of assessment, and we all know that assessment is the process of gathering and discussing information from multiple and diverse sources in order to develop a deep understanding of what students can do with their knowledge as a result of their educational experiences. This ends our discussion about the 12 principles of teaching and learning a language. So this should be invested wisely in every activities as well as apply in our teaching in order for the students to learn effectively and efficiently.